It's Niner week. Rashee Rice has an update. And what does that mean for the tradescape? Coming at you next on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget, we have lots of other shows that are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am your host, Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. I did it this time.
See, it's not that easy.
That guy over there is Ryan Tracy from RGR Football and NFL 33. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the prep for the 49ers. There's going to be a lot more talk about that game as it's coming up later this week. Trade reality, is it possible or is it more of a rumor at this point? And then we do have a Rashee Rice injury update. Looks like Andy Reid had some stuff to say about Rashee Rice. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you for Gametime for sponsoring our show. Ryan, what did Andy Reid have to say about Rashee Rice today?
Yeah, it was pretty detailed and kind of strange. More of a detailed response than we usually get from Andy Reid. And there's a lot of C's and L's that get thrown around with knee injuries, folks. So we'll try to lay this out. It is not a specific lateral collateral ligament injury. That would be an LCL, and that's what we've been understanding so far because we didn't have the specifics. But we had a tie in there with a hamstring injury that they repaired as well. And now Andy went through it with the press group today. It is a posterior lateral corner injury, which is the back of the outside of your knee. If you just feel down where your hamstring comes in and attaches to the back of your knee, it's right in there. And there's a group of ligaments and tendons and structures that connect everything together. It helps the fibula connect back into the tibia underneath the plateau, so you have that two-bone platform to run on. There's also a lot of guys that have this that end up with a tibial plateau fracture in addition to this posterior corner. And there's also ligaments and tendons that control the external rotation, internal rotation of the lower leg as well. So there's a lot of structures in there. If they'd come out and said it's just an LCL, we'd have felt like, okay, that's a mild strain. It was pretty decent. But with the hyperextension and the external rotation at the time of injury, that all leads to this posterior lateral corner, which is a bigger structure and can be more damaged. There could be a number of collateral things that happen there, like hamstring injury, some nerve infraction, like things that are going to have to be rehabbed out. So it is a more significant injury than just the LCL. Andy put it as an ACL timeline in similarity. And I do, from everything that I know, seems about right. I have not actually rehabbed an athlete with this one before, but I have seen it done, and I have checked a couple of my sources that say that that is pretty good. It could be a little bit longer, but this is worse than we thought it was in terms of timeline, but good that they got it fixed right away.
Yeah, it's good that they got it fixed. The bigger concern really is what he can do next year. There's a lot that's going to be talked about between now and next year. So we'll have to deal with that as it comes. Little interesting that it got reported as an LCL or something that was best case scenario, because this does not sound best case scenario to me. All I can think of when you're sitting there talking about the injury is ow. I've had knee issues for my entire life. So I can't say I've had this one, obviously, but knee injuries are not fun, and it's good that it's not an ACL or an MCL or LCL, I guess, in that regard. They're not having to repair those types of things, but this does not sound like it's going to be a fun injury to recover from. And I did see a picture today of him actually starting rehab. So it looks like he's already started that process, just doing leg raises, which makes sense because it's going to take a long time just to get the strength back in that leg.
Yeah, and the good part is, especially with the tie-in with the hamstring, we know that they announced last week that there was a hamstring repair done as well. So you can understand that that is tied into the tendon that connects that as well. The muscle is going to heal pretty easily compared to the rest of the structure, right? So by strengthening that and getting onto the rehab schedule, like you said, by building up the muscle structure around it, it helps aid that stability and should help everything hopefully knit together better. Because long term, what you worry about is stability of the joint, not necessarily anything crazy like external overextension or anything like that hyperextension look like, because it's a traumatic injury. Unfortunately, a lot like we saw with Aiden Hutchinson yesterday. If Aiden's shin comes down a little bit closer to the knee, it probably doesn't fracture, but this is another injury motion that could have caused something very similar. So that's just how much force is going on with these guys.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that. I got queasy looking at that. So it's rough. I will say this kind of changes things for me a little bit in the regard of, I know we're talking about Rashee Rice and we're talking about this year. He won't be available this year. We know that. There's going to be a timeline. There's going to be a question of when he's going to be available next year, because obviously in ACL, you're dealing with 6 months, 8 months, 9 months recovery, generally speaking. So you're looking at, OTAs next year. But the thing that this really does for me is this actually brings into question what they're going to plan on doing at the receiver position for 2025. Because to me, you can't count on him being a big part of your offense. At least not right now. You can't figure that that's going to be a big part of your offense. And I don't know that they're even going to know in OTAs if he can be a big part of their offense, because it's all going to be determined based on how he recovers, how his body adjusts to it, and all of that. So we may end up talking about wide receivers being a bigger need than we ever would have thought, because this is such a much larger injury.
You're absolutely right. And if you're talking we're talking draft time when he might be cleared to actually start doing something, running on a field. OTAs have already come and gone at that point. Yes, there's the extended and there's the mandatory minicamp that comes afterwards. But we're talking May, June at the earliest, at what is the accelerated timeline. So be hopeful, see what happens, and everybody's different. And I think anybody who's been involved with rehabbing serious injuries will tell you everybody heals a little bit different. There's a general timeline, but it can vary by person. So just keep your fingers crossed and see what happens there. There's also going to be another delay possible with the off the field thing. So that may build in some other recovery time.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think the other thing that this could play into is this could make Kansas City look in the free agent class for a wide receiver. There's already talk about maybe trying to bring Brown back, considering his injury, and he will not cost much in 2025, but there's going to be a lot to talk about when we get to that down the road.
Yeah, there definitely is. But what does that do to making rumor turn into reality, or reality not look like a rumor? What's the trade situation coming up next? Hey there, NFL fans. You can get started right now with a big return with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Takes the life out of your middle there. And so when you have that hunch in the middle of a ball game or in the middle of the day on a packed Sunday with a full slate, you can check the latest stats, check out the live play-by-play, and get that so deep into the game that you can make your decisions and go on the same page to place your bets. Makes life super simple. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It's over at FanDuel. There's a lot of options there, especially when Patrick's throwing interceptions early or we're running the ball really good. You never know what's going to happen, but if you have a gut feeling, check it out at FanDuel.com. Is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. PrizePicks has daily fantasy sports and makes it accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Run your game all season long at PrizePicks. They make it simple, and they even invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So sign up today and you can get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. You don't even have to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the Gametime app and use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $50 instantly after you play a $5 lineup. Super simple. Download that app, use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and get that $50 bonus for playing a $5 lineup. Super easy over at PrizePicks. Andy was a busy guy. Obviously, Rashee Rice is a big piece of news, but it ties into a number of other things, including the 49ers that we'll talk about later. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell, folks, and get on the text line at 816-357-8781. We're also on the audio side only on Spotify and Apple Music. Now, we've talked about trades for the last couple of weeks, and it's been back and forth. A lot of fans pushing back on me about they don't really need this. This is just rumor. Well, let me put some of it to bed. We don't report on rumors unless we tell you, hey, there's a rumor out there that says this. We talk and we deal on analyzing what are reports. And it came straight from the horse's mouth today. Andy Reid also made comments based on what would a trade look like, placidly acknowledging that, yes, there's a possibility out there. And he said specifically that it would be the best fit if they could find a receiver that is familiar or has played in specifically the West Coast offense or with Andy's version of in some form or fashion before. But it's not absolutely a necessity. So I think that speaks to the availability pool, to tell you the truth, and what he would like versus what might be available. But then he comes back and says, I'm not saying that we need to bring someone in. So like he's covering all of his bases there. And I think that really tells you that they are trying to keep this cloak and dagger because they are, according to reports, have already been and gone in the Devontae Adams talks and have contacted at least 2 other teams from the reports that I've seen and trust. This is a reality that they are looking. I just don't know who the target is. Do you?
I don't know who the target is, but there's not going to be a ton of people that make sense. If you want to look at the Andy Reid coaching tree type situation, you're looking at any of the Jacksonville wide receivers. And as I said yesterday, Brian Thomas Jr., come on down. Not likely. Christian Kirk, I guess, would be the guy that they would consider trying to trade at that point. I still don't know how that fits. I don't know that Jacksonville would want to go down that road. But otherwise, I mean, I think you're really limited as to who's going to be who that they would feel is going to be somebody that could come in and really work in their system quickly. I know people have thrown this name out there. I cannot see Andy doing it, or I could see him doing it. I just don't see the value. Demarcus Robinson, people have thrown out because he's played here before. Rams aren't doing very well. I just don't really think that that's the you have enough 3s and 4s. I don't think that he can step in and be anything more than that. So I don't see a point. So then you're getting into, Deontay Johnson. Didn't come from the Andy Reid coaching tree, but that's one of the hottest names on the block right now. Amari Cooper is another one. I think both those guys would make a lot of sense. But I also think that Amari Cooper could step in and be in this offense and probably be pretty comfortable in it in about a month. The question I have is, can Deontay Johnson do that too? I know he's a veteran, but it's hard to know whether he could step in as quickly.
I would think that Cooper's a little bit more amenable. I think Johnson struggled at times in Pittsburgh, and I think that you can see that maybe the adjustment period might need to be longer. I would put my money on Cooper. It's kind of why I've been leaning that way all along. But those guys are both those scenarios that lean outside of a West Coast-based guy.
Yep.
But they are the best 2 available. I completely agree with you. Now, DeMarcus is DeMarcus. He's been the recipient of some of Patrick's greatest passes, to be honest. The original no look against the Ravens comes to mind. But I agree with you. He does trust him. And he understands the scramble drill maybe better than anybody that's played in Kansas City, other than Tyree. But I agree with you. He doesn't raise the ceiling. He raises the floor because if you had to pull up a Remigio or a Justin Ross, he outplays them in this offense right now, in my opinion. Demarcus Robinson.
And outplays Sky Moore.
Agreed. But he doesn't raise the ceiling. He's not going to play outplayed worthy in terms of physical capability. And quite frankly, I think Justin Watson's been very reliable at this point. So I don't know about the reliability factor there. And it may come down to availability with the Rams there. We'll see. It's certainly a safer bet, and we've seen them take that before.
The thing that really is throwing me off with this whole thing is, could they make a trade? Yeah, but the only way to really raise the ceiling of this team is to go out and get a guy like Amari Cooper or a Deontay Johnson or somebody of that type. And there may be a couple of names that come out in the next week or 2 before the trade deadline. We'll see. But those are the 2 guys that are probably more likely than not to be able to be traded for right now. I know people have thrown out a guy like Cooper Kupp. One, I don't think he fits salary cap wise. I don't see how that would happen. And two, I can't imagine the Rams wanting to make that deal. And you're going to have to give up a lot more to get Cooper Kupp than anybody else. So that would be fantastic.
He's not even viable right now, right? He's missed
probably not
3 straight weeks.
Yeah, but I think he's getting back. I think he's close to getting back in the next week or two. I think he'll be back by the trade deadline, which would make him viable. The big question to me is, when you look at this, are you going to have a receiver that can step in and actually raise the ceiling this season? And I don't think that you're going to have anybody outside of maybe Amari Cooper that could step in and actually help right now. And I mean during the season. I'm not talking playoffs. I'm talking season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Deontay Johnson can do that. I don't know that anybody can really raise the ceiling that you can bring in that's going to be able to help in season. That's the big question. So to me, while you may want to make a move because you're looking at January and February, I completely get that. I don't know that you're going to have somebody out there that you could see that's going to come in and step in and raise the ceiling very much. Demarcus Robinson makes sense to an extent because he would raise the floor. And like we both said, Patrick trusts him. And I do think that there is an element to that could really help. And I wouldn't mind seeing them make multiple different moves, bring in a guy like Amari Cooper or Deontay Johnson and go get a guy like Demarcus Robinson. Then you add 2 guys and you have somebody that can raise the floor and kind of help for the next couple of weeks. And then you have a guy that is learning on the fly for the next, 10 weeks.
Right. Well, I see this as one of those post-apocalyptic disaster movies, right? Meteor hits the earth, the oceans rise, and there's water everywhere, right? This is a bridge to Hollywood. That's what I'm calling that, because it's just trying to get you an option until Hollywood can get back on the field, maybe postseason, maybe late in the season. You got to get something to get you through there and allow Hollywood to get his legs back underneath him when he's healed. I think that's, in fact, I'm going to coin that. That's the next movie script I'll put together, is a bridge to Hollywood, because I think that's really the goal for this team right now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind that. I guess I'm just a little concerned that you get a bridge to Hollywood and then Hollywood comes back and injures his hamstring, is out for the rest of the playoffs. He's been an injury-prone receiver, so I mean, without Rice, you're kind of in a hard situation, right? And I mean, with Worthy, you hope that he continues to improve and he continues to progress, because he was progressing actually faster than Rice was. But they have to give him more different types of routes than they were giving in the first several weeks. And I think that that's going to continue over the next month or so. So we'll see how that works. But again, I go back to what I said yesterday. I think that's one of the reasons they brought Jody Fortson back, and then they want to go more 13 and 14 personnel, because I think that it could be hard for them to replace anybody at the wide receiver position, especially for the next month.
Yeah, and it becomes really apparent, especially when your next matchup is the 49ers, that look like they're getting better. So how do they prep specifically right now, pre-trade or any of that noise? How do they get ready for the Niners? That's coming up next. The atmosphere at Arrowhead is unique. There's nothing like it. Nowhere more in the world that you want to watch a ball game than right there from those seats. Finding those seats is always interesting. It makes it super easy to use Gametime. It's all in pricing, so you never get hit with anything strange. You don't get surprised at checkout. You get to see the view from every seat in the stadium, so you know exactly what that ball game is going to look like when you're sitting there. And they offer the lowest price guarantee. You find it cheaper somewhere else, they'll give you 110% of the difference right there on the spot. All you got to do is get the Gametime app. So go download it, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off of your first purchase. Again, all you got to do is create an account and use the code. It's LOCKEDONNFL, and you get $20 off. Go down that Gametime app today. What time is it? Gametime. I am particularly excited about this rematch. Usually the Super Bowl rematch is kind of This is one where the loss of CMC kind of set their season off badly. Then Debo is hurt, et cetera, et cetera. Debo's back. Kittle's hitting his stride. Fred Warner looks like he's playing as good as I've seen him play against our Chiefs or anybody else. And so especially the matchup in the short area behind the line of scrimmage. Fred Warner's land, we can call it. That's where it gets really interesting about trying to go 13, 14 personnel and what you can do there, because Chiefs tight ends are built like wide receivers for the most part, but that doesn't bother Fred Warner. So if you're looking ahead to this, how do you prep specifically for him, knowing he mans the middle in a very, very unique way, and you're going to have a solution for it?
It's going to be tough. I think one of the things, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was a running back screen in the Super Bowl last year, and I'm pretty sure Pacheco caught the screen, or maybe it was McKinnon, and was about to take it to the house, and Fred Warner came out of nowhere to stop it. And I know you're talking about tight ends. I know you're talking about that area of the field, but the point is he makes plays that other players generally aren't going to make. And if it wasn't Fred Warner on the field, that specific play probably goes for a touchdown. So you have to find ways to attack, and you have to find ways to make it to where he is not going to be able to, take over on defense and shut your tight ends down and your intermediate game down. You're gonna have to attack different levels. So to me, you have to attack over the top and keep the safeties back, because then you have him trying to, play more of an intermediate between, the line of scrimmage and, 20 yards downfield. So he has to cover more space. I think that's one of the ways you're going to have to do things. Maybe that means that Cole Hardman is going to get more time this week, because they're going to try to be sending Worthy and McCole down the field on deeper routes. So we'll see how that happens, but they're definitely going to have to change some things up. And the running game, I think, is going to have to be heavily involved, because I think that that's going to be something that they're going to need to focus on, because like we talked about in the last segment, wide receiver is going to be a struggle at times for them this year.
I agree with you. And I agree with the principle of running at Fred and that front as well. Keep Nick Bosa from teeing off against some of the other things that we're going to talk about in our game preview coming up on Friday. Don't miss that, folks. But it's the personnel. It's not that I'm not scared of Debo. It's not that I'm not scared of Kittle. Brandon Ayuk has been criminally underused this season, in my opinion. But the Chiefs have matchups of advantages on their defense that I do feel allows them to work against the 49ers offense, as long as CMC isn't there, with enough edge that it really comes down to putting points up on the offensive side. Not that CMC is going to be back, but they've been so good against the run, and they've been so good in generally limiting big plays, chunk plays. It's just about pressuring Purdy for me. It's the number one thing that Chris Jones has to get the rest of these guys to come and attack. Do you think they can get that done?
It's going to be tough. San Francisco has a good line, especially at left tackle. Trent Williams has been pretty good this year. It's going to be tough for them to get pressure, and you're absolutely right. They have to get pressure on Purdy. They have to make him, speed up. Go back to this again. Go back to the Super Bowl, the last drive that the 49ers had. Chris Jones is the only reason that the 49ers did not score a touchdown there. They had to kick a field goal because he sped Purdy up. He found a weakness on their offensive line, exploited it, and sped him up and made him throw it before he wanted to. If you can do that, and Jones doesn't have to do it every play, obviously, but if he can do that, once or twice every quarter, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape, because at that point, you're probably getting them off the field enough to where you're slowing their offense down and you're making them do long drives and not explosive plays, which is, I think, how they want to be attacking Kansas City. But the Chiefs have been very good at limiting those plays this year so far. Obviously, the Shaheed thing was one thing, but the 49ers don't have that type of speed. They have speed, but they don't have Shaheed type speed. That's a little bit different.
Shaheed speed, they do not have. I'm with you there. We kind of briefly mentioned Jennings yesterday. He's a guy who made some plays against them last time they saw him. It comes back to the bottom line is that when you pressure Brock Purdy, who's only been pressured, I believe it's 86 snaps of his 218 dropbacks so far this season. So roughly right at a third, the Chiefs can up that percentage and actually get the pressure up to the 50s. His ADOT drops. His yards per attempt goes down to 7.5 when he is pressured. I mean, that's a significant drop off from the 9.5 when he's not. So I think that comes back, and we're going to talk about it all week, certainly on the game preview, about getting that pressure. That's going to be one of the keys.
And one of the big things, and you kind of already mentioned this, but also mention it again. One of the biggest things is that they can do is continuously put them in 3rd and longs. And what I mean by that is do what they've been doing all season long. Stop them in the running game, stop them from running on the early downs, make it a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 type situation. And then you're in a situation where you can pin your ears back and go after the passer and feel like you're attacking Purdy and try to get after him a little bit easier in that regard. And you can send blitzes when you're in those situations a lot easier because you're not worried about them gashing you in the running game.
Does make your life a little bit simpler. I'm looking pretty forward to it. We'll see what Matt has to say and his impression about Andy Reid, the injuries, and the updates tomorrow, folks. Matt Derrick will be with us as he always is on Wednesdays. Then we get with the guys from San Francisco to get the inside intel on them, go back and forth. That's going to be a fun show. Don't miss Thursday and Friday. We're going to set you up for this game and get you prepared. It's a busy week. They are back from bye, and it's going to be one of those just hold on tight and keep going. But thank you for being with us today. We appreciate your time. Make sure that you check out another Locked On show for your next listen. Appreciate you being here first. You locos, appreciate you. On the text line at 816-357-8781. Check out Locked On NFL. It's twice a day now with both of our pals, Tyler and Tony. They're going to hook you up and give you the basics of what you need to know, when you need to know it. And you don't have to listen for 2.5 hours or whatever the big national shows are doing now. It's crazy. Have a great day. Thanks for being with us. We're going to be back tomorrow with Matt and Derrick, and we'll talk to you then.